Hello, I'm Beth Britton. I support Dementia Community with their communications work. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our first June webinar. Before we get on to the topic for today, I wanted to briefly explain a little bit more about Dementia Community. Dementia Community is a charitable community benefit society, a membership cooperative that provides learning and networking opportunities for the dementia care community. Dementia Community's core purpose is to connect and empower the dementia care community. Dementia Community's vision is of a world where all people in the dementia care community feel connected, informed, empowered and purposeful, and are actively engaged in co-producing changes that improve everyone's experience of dementia in care and in wider society. To sum up, if you are aware of the work of the National Dementia Action Alliance before it disbanded, we hope that Dementia Community is a replacement for the NDAA. Community members own a £1 community share in Dementia Community, and membership is open to everyone. So if you aren't already a member, do join us. There are both benefits and opportunities for all of our members. My colleague Beth Lang has popped a link in the chat that will take you to our membership page. You can also scan the QR code on your screen now. If you have any difficulties joining Dementia Community, then please do message Beth or myself and we will do our best to help. So, on to the topic for today's webinar, which is Adaptation of the World Health Organization's iSupport for South Asian Dementia Carers. I will introduce you to our speaker shortly, but just some brief housekeeping first. We are recording this webinar, so if you don't want your face on the recording, please turn your camera off. Please use the chat for your questions. We will have a Q&A and discussion after the presentation, and we will be keeping an eye on the chat. We hope to have some live participation too, so if you'd like to ask your question yourself, please do raise your hand when we get to the Q&A. Afterwards, Beth Lang will email you with the slides. The recording will also go onto our YouTube channel, the Journal of Dementia Care, so please do look out for that. We will also send you a feedback form afterwards, and we'd be really grateful if you would complete that and return it to us. So let's get started. Our speaker for today is Suman Kurana. Suman is a research assistant at University College London for the Department of Clinical, Educational and Health Psychology. Suman, welcome, thank you, and over to you.
Just going to unmute myself. I will just share my slides first. So just give me a moment. Perfect. Brilliant. So sorry, can everyone just see my slides?
That's fine with me, Suman.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, hi everyone. I hope you're all well, and thank you so much for joining today. So, my name is Suman, and I'll be talking to you about the translation and cultural adaptation of iSupport for South Asian dementia caregivers in the UK. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what today's webinar will look like. So we'll talk a little bit about what iSupport is. We'll talk about the modules within iSupport. And then I'll talk a little bit about a randomized control trial of iSupport that I've been involved in. And then the process that we undertook to translate and culturally adapt iSupport in Bengali, Punjabi and Urdu. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about iSupport Lite, which is basically a shorter form of iSupport. And then I'll talk to you about the iSupport Bengali feasibility study, and then finally how to access iSupport as well. So what is iSupport? So iSupport is an online self-directed educational program for people looking after someone living with dementia, and it was developed by the World Health Organization. It aims to help you learn about dementia and how to look after someone living with dementia. And it also includes information about how to take care of yourself so that you can continue to support the person that you're caring for. So iSupport is organised into 5 modules, and these modules are called Introduction to Dementia, Being a Carer, Caring for Me, Providing Everyday Care, and then Dealing with Changes that might happen in people with dementia. So each module is divided into individual lessons, which basically include information about dementia and caregiving. It includes descriptive examples, multiple choice questions, and activities to practice what you've learned. So you can basically choose to read through the entire program from the beginning to the end, or you can select lessons that are most relevant to your sort of everyday life and situation. And just to say that iSupport is freely accessible online, printable, and can be accessed offline as well. And in terms of adaptations of iSupport, so iSupport has actually been adapted in other contexts as well. So iSupport's been adapted in Brazil, Indonesia, Portugal, and Spain as well. And then what I can do is sort of leave some references at the end in case anybody was interested in reading a little bit more about these adaptations. So I thought it might be helpful to sort of go through each module and just summarize the type of information that you can expect to find in the modules. So the first module is called Introduction to Dementia. So this module outlines what dementia is, the different types of dementia, what might increase the chance of developing dementia, and what happens to people with dementia as the disease progresses. What to do if you think that the person you care for has dementia, and then how to reach out for help and support as well. The next module is called Being a Carer. So this module has 4 lessons. So lesson 1 is about the journey together. So this lesson teaches you how to stay connected, how to involve other people in the care, taking care of yourself, and how to plan for the future as well. Lesson 2 is about improving communication. So this lesson teaches you how to talk in a simple and direct way, how to get sort of attention in a respectful way, and how to show compassion in everyday situations as well. Lesson 3 is about supported decision making. So this lesson teaches you how to support a person living with dementia to make their own decisions for as long as possible, or to assist in making decisions in the person's best interest. And then lesson 4 is about involving others and getting support. So this lesson teaches you the importance of involving others, effectively asking help from others, and also introduces readers to what services and financial support is available. And then the next module is called Caring for Me. So this module has 3 lessons. So lesson 1 is about reducing stress in everyday life. So this lesson helps users to sort of reduce stress with exercises that they could do that won't take too much time. So that's sort of like basic breathing, mindfulness breathing, imagery, and muscle relaxation. Lesson 2 is about making time for pleasant activities. So this lesson teaches users about the importance of pleasant activities, sort of barriers to doing pleasant activities, and how to make pleasant activities achievable. And then lesson 3 is about thinking differently. So this lesson teaches individuals about the importance of thinking differently and sort of changing those unhelpful thoughts into more helpful ones. And then the next module is called Providing Everyday Care. So this module has 5 lessons. So lesson 1 is about eating and drinking, and this teaches individuals how to make meal times more pleasant for the person living with dementia, sort of promoting a good mealtime atmosphere, health conditions that might affect eating and drinking, and preventing dehydration. Lesson 2 is about eating and drinking and preventing health problems. So this lesson teaches you how to improve eating and drinking, prevent weight loss, how to help the person that you care for eat safely, and also prevent pneumonia. And lesson 3 is about toileting and continence care. So this lesson teaches individuals about the possible solutions for problems such as urinating on the floor or losing bladder control, and it also introduces users to incontinence aids and equipment. And then lesson 4 is about personal care. So this lesson teaches users about sort of modifying the environment to make sure that personal care is easier. And it offers tips for daily dressing, oral care, and also assisting in bathing. And then lesson 5 is about daily routines. So this lesson teaches individuals how to establish routines for the person living with dementia and how to adapt routines and activities as the person's abilities might change as well. And then the final module is called Dealing with Changes in People with Dementia. So this one has 9 lessons. So lesson 1 is about Introduction to Behavior Changes. So this lesson introduces individuals to behavior changes that might be particularly stressful, and it also introduces readers to sort of different skills in terms of responding to different behavior changes. Lesson 2 is about memory loss. So this lesson sort of introduces individuals on what memory loss is and how to respond to it as well, in more so like a compassionate way. And then lesson 3 is about aggression. So this lesson helps you to understand the possible causes of aggression and help you sort of develop skills to sort of prevent or deal with the aggression. And lesson 4 is about depression, anxiety, and apathy. So this one helps readers to sort of understand the possible causes of depression, anxiety, and apathy, and then how to respond to a person living with dementia that might be feeling anxious or depressed. And then also how to respond when someone might sort of lose interest in daily activities as well. So lesson 5 is about difficulty sleeping. So this lesson helps readers to promote good sleeping for the person with dementia and also sort of supporting them with when waking in the middle of the night. Lesson 6 is about delusions and hallucinations. So this lesson helps readers to sort of understand why people with dementia might have unreal thoughts and see things that aren't there, and how to stop and reduce delusions and hallucinations. Lesson 7 is about repetitive behavior. So this lesson helps readers understand why repetitive behaviors might occur and then how to respond to them and reduce them. And then lesson 8 is about walking and getting lost. So this lesson helps readers understand why walking might be a concern, why a person with dementia might want to walk around, and then how to sort of manage habits and reduce the chances that a person with dementia might get lost. And then lesson 9 is about changes in judgment. So this lesson sort of helps individuals understand what changes in judgment are and then how to manage changes in judgment as well. So I just wanted to sort of move on to talk a little bit briefly about the randomized control trial of iSupport before I talk about the adaptation of iSupport. So we've also completed a multi-site randomized control trial to evaluate the clinical and cost effectiveness of iSupport. So just to say that this randomized control trial, it was for an English version of the iSupport intervention. And this was the first study in the UK to do this. So 352 informal carers aged 18 plus living in Britain who self-identified as experiencing stress and depression were recruited. So participants were randomized to receive iSupport, which was our intervention condition, or standardized information about caring for someone with dementia, which was our control comparison. And then measures to assess caregiving burden, depression, anxiety, quality of life, resilience, dementia knowledge, and quality of carer patient relationship were completed at baseline, 3 months, and then 6 months as well, either via telephone or video conferencing. And then we also did a process evaluation, so qualitative interviews as well, just to explore the barriers and facilitators to implementing iSupport. And this was completed with 52 people. And iSupport was also translated into Welsh, and new adaptations were also produced for young people and carers of people with rare dementias as well. So this was the largest randomized controlled testing of an e-health intervention for dementia carers in the UK. And the study had a good participant retention of 74.7%. And outcome measures were collected over time. And they were also analysed with iSupport usage data, just to understand if there were differences between the group of individuals that were receiving the intervention versus the group of individuals that were receiving the control. And then the findings of the study sort of lead us to sort of discuss about when to provide support and how engagement with self-guided interventions could be encouraged. And just to say that the findings of this research are going to be published in open access journals and also a synopsis through the NIHR journals library later this year, which is why I can't go too much into the findings, but these will be published soon. And then now I just wanted to sort of move on to talk about the adaptation of iSupport for South Asian dementia caregivers in the UK. So just to offer some background, in terms of South Asian dementia caregivers, that there is a rising prevalence of South Asians with dementia in the UK. However, South Asian dementia caregivers and people living with dementia are quite underrepresented in dementia services. And there's several barriers to this that might prevent them from accessing services. So some of these barriers might include a limited understanding of dementia, its effects on personality, reasoning, speech, a belief that dementia is a normal part of aging and that care is best performed by the family, having that fear that accessing support will be interpreted as abandoning their family member, perhaps a lack of culturally appropriate services, and then also cultural concerns about sort of residential care homes as well, because of concerns around staff diversity, suitable meals, communication, and then also respect for cultural beliefs. So supporting this group and these informal caregivers is really important, because caregiving is associated with poorer physical, mental, and social self-care as well. So yeah, and then in terms of e-health interventions, they offer cost-effective support to caregivers, and they also support isolated populations who might face challenges in accessing conventional services. So to support this community, we've translated and culturally adapted the iSupport intervention for South Asian dementia caregivers living in the UK who speak Bengali, Punjabi, and Urdu. So just to talk a little bit about the process. So to adapt iSupport, we followed the guidelines that were outlined in the World Health Organization iSupport Adaptation and Implementation Guide. And we initially had the intervention translated from English to Bengali, Punjabi, and Urdu. And following the translation, we had 2 expert reviewers who were healthcare professionals in dementia care to review the translations for accuracy. And then they also offered suggestions for any improvements. So in terms of the cultural adaptation, so we worked in partnership with community organisations to recruit caregivers and dementia healthcare professionals for the adaptation and field testing phase. So we used a co-design methodology, which basically involved focus groups and interviews with dementia caregivers, which were 21 individuals, and health and social care professionals, which were 20 individuals, to guide initial cultural adaptations. So in total, we had 41 stakeholders across 3 languages critically examining the translated version of iSupport on various topics. So that might include sort of language, culture, function, design, content, and resources as well. And then we had the carers and professionals also field test the adapted iSupport websites after their initial sort of round of feedback. So we basically adapted it, and then we had them field test the adapted iSupport websites and to sort of gain that additional feedback. So we had 16 caregivers and 10 professionals at the stage providing that additional feedback. And then I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the findings and the adaptations that we actually made to the intervention. So I've grouped these into sort of different categories. So this was all based on the feedback from the focus groups. So we created a sort of simplified English version using plain language, which we then retranslated into each target language. So this involved sort of simplifying phrases such as enjoyable day, personal care, preface, just to make sure that they were easy to understand. And we also revised the translated content with the help of bilingual research staff, just to ensure that it was both clear and simple. And also for terms that were quite difficult to translate, we used transliteration as well. In terms of sort of the cultural adaptations, we included culturally familiar names. We mentioned culturally familiar foods like khichdi, clothing such as salwar kameez, festivals like Diwali, traditions, places of worship, for example, mosques and gurdwaras, and then relevant activities such as Friday prayers. We also removed any explicit terms related to intimacy, but that being said, we were advised to sort of avoid emphasizing certain cultural references. So for example, in situations where females might not support males with personal care, so we were advised not to sort of put that out there too much, but and that's because in many families the primary responsibility for care might still lie with the most present family member, regardless of their gender. We also addressed sort of stigma and guilt related to self-care a lot, with messages like, if you don't look after yourself, then it's much harder to look after those around you. And we clearly defined sort of carer roles as well, and encourage seeking help with statements such as, you might feel you're doing what anyone else would do for a family member or friend. However, describing yourself as a carer might enable you to access the help and support that you need. And we also clarified misconceptions about financial support to reassure caregivers that seeking financial assistance does not diminish their role as caregivers, as this is something that was a recurring theme that sort of came up in the focus groups. And then we also created illustrations, which I'll show you guys shortly, that were more culturally representative and meaningful. And then we adapted the front cover pages of the intervention to specifically represent South Asian individuals. We also made several changes to the structure, function, and design. So we condensed the content into bullet points to enhance readability. We also developed summary posters for each module. We used larger font sizes, used distinct colors to ensure visual clarity. And then we also had a side panel built into the website just to allow easy navigation between the modules and lessons, and so that people can come back to a lesson or module from where they last left off from. And then we also included a read aloud function as well, just to sort of support different users' preferences. So for example, someone might not be able to read one of the languages too well, but they might be able to completely understand it. So a read aloud function might be quite helpful in that occasion. And then we also included sections that sort of provide brief information on financial guidance, benefit details, relevant helplines, because it was highlighted in the focus groups that carers might benefit from knowing more about practical support as well. So just to sort of show you guys a little bit of the work that we've done. So this is actually an example of a page from iSupport's Bengali version. And this page is basically discussing the possible solutions for difficulties such as urinating on the floor for the person living with dementia. So yeah, that's the Bengali version. And then I can show you this one. So this is an example of a page from the iSupport's Punjabi version. So this page over here is discussing an example to sort of demonstrate how unhelpful thoughts can be changed into more helpful ones. And then this one is an example of a page from iSupport's Urdu version. So this page has an exercising asking readers to select the appropriate ways to respond to behaviour change. And readers are basically provided with feedback on the correct answers after they select their options. And then so this is an example of a page from iSupport's English version. So this is actually a version that we culturally adapted, but was written in English just to support caregivers from South Asian communities that might not read or understand Bengali, Punjabi, or Urdu. So we have a culturally adapted English version as well. And then, yeah, I just wanted to show you guys some examples of the illustrations that we had produced. So a lot of these are, they're more sort of human-centric illustrations and quite culturally representative as well. So over here, we have an illustration of two individuals walking towards a mosque. We have an illustration of a diva, which is a lamp that you sort of light up during Diwali, which is a religious festival for Hindus and Sikhs. And then we've got two individuals over here that are sitting inside a gurdwara, which is a place of worship for Sikhs. And then we've got some traditional attire as well. So this is called sort of salwar kameez. So we really wanted to have, this was something that sort of came up consistently within the focus groups, that there weren't enough images that represented the South Asian community. So in line with that feedback, we had sort of these illustrations created. And then, so many of the caregivers and dementia care professionals suggested condensing iSupport due to carers having really busy schedules. So this is iSupport Lite, which is an easy to read and accessible summary of the iSupport program, and it's available in English, Bengali, Punjabi, and Urdu. And the posters can be downloaded and printed. So on the screen over here, we have some examples of the summary posters. So the first one is a poster from iSupport Punjabi, and then we've got one from iSupport Bengali and iSupport Urdu as well. And then I don't have it on the slide over here, but we have also created iSupport Lite for the culturally adapted English version as well. So there's 4 different iSupport Lites for English, Bengali, Punjabi, and Urdu. And then I just wanted to sort of move on to talk a little bit about the iSupport Bengali feasibility study. So we actually completed a remotely facilitated single group pre-post feasibility test of the iSupport Bengali intervention with qualitative interviews that we did after the intervention delivery. So we recruited participants through joint dementia research, social media, and through carers support organisations. and we recruited 5 Bengali-speaking adults who self-identified as an unpaid carer of a person with dementia who wasn't living in a full-time care facility, caring at least weekly for at least 6 months, and carers were required to self-identify as experiencing at least some stress, depression, or anxiety. And we required the care recipient to have a confirmed diagnosis of dementia, but this was through sort of self-report of the carer. So the carers used the adapted iSupport Bengali intervention over 3 months, and they completed measures to assess caregiving burden, depression, anxiety, and quality of life. And these were basically completed at baseline and 3 months. And then we also did qualitative interviews exploring the feasibility, acceptability, and the cultural appropriateness of the intervention. So just to summarize the findings a little bit, so at follow-up, we had 2 of 5 participants completing outcome measures. So because of our really small sample size, we can't really conclude we can't have any sort of confirmed findings in terms of the quantitative findings, so that remains sort of inconclusive because of the small sample size. And then out of the participants, 2 out of the 5 participants completed qualitative interviews. But I'd really like to share some of the findings that we had from those qualitative interviews about the iSupport Bengali intervention. So one caregiver sort of described their intention to sort of prioritize their personal well-being. They also described how iSupport sort of facilitated meaningful conversations with healthcare professionals on behalf of the person that they were caring for. One of the caregivers also reported having sort of an enhanced understanding of different dementia types, and then improved knowledge regarding dementia symptoms. And then one caregiver also, oh, sorry, I think I've just skipped past. There we go. So one caregiver also discussed implementing changes in their caregiving approaches as a result of accessing support. So they mentioned sort of refining their communication strategies, being able to recognize the influence of the environment on the person with living with dementia, the importance of fostering a supportive environment. And also they valued the importance of actually engaging the person with dementia in activities as well. So yeah, in terms of why is iSupport for South Asian dementia caregivers important? So as previously mentioned, there really is a lack of culturally appropriate interventions for South Asian dementia caregivers. And this translation and adaptation of iSupport improves equity of access to the interventions. And it's important because there's a rising prevalence of people with dementia in these communities in the UK. And sort of by tailoring this intervention to their cultural nuances and, you know, the challenges that might be faced by them, we really sort of aim to sort of overcome barriers such as limited dementia awareness and stigma. And such interventions can offer timely interventions that provide carers with essential knowledge and skills to manage caregiving challenges effectively while improving caregivers' mental health and well-being. And so who can use iSupport? So I would say that iSupport has a really broad use. So family members of individuals with dementia, they might benefit from iSupport by sort of gaining a better understanding of dementia and learning how to provide effective support. Health and social care professionals, so that might include sort of support workers, healthcare assistants, doctors, nurses, and social workers. They might be able to sort of use iSupport as a resource to enhance their own knowledge and skills in dementia care, but also they might use it to share with people that they might be working with. And it really does sort of provide that evidence-based information and strategies for supporting individuals living with dementia and their carers as well. And I think also community organizations that provide support to individuals with dementia, and they could sort of use it to sort of structure educational or support group meetings, or it might simply also be used as a resource tool for people that might be organizing self-help groups for carers. And yeah, so here are the links to access the different versions of the iSupport. So the first link is actually the original iSupport that the World Health Organization sort of brought out. And then the second link, if you were to click on it, it takes you over to all of the different adaptations. So that's the adaptations for rare dementias, and then also adaptations for the South Asian dementia caregivers, and then also for younger carers as well. And then over here, we have the links, the direct links as well to the Bengali, Punjabi, Urdu, and English interventions. And this is through the UCL website directly. And then the second link is also a link to the iSupport Lite, which is the summary posters. And yeah, just to say that I am presenting on behalf of a larger research team, and here's everyone who has been a part of the research project. And then, yeah, we also acknowledge the support of all the different community organisations that have been involved in supporting this project. And we wouldn't have been able to sort of do this project and put this out there without the support of all these organisations. And yeah, and then in terms of these, just to say that these are the references for the papers that were describing the other adaptations of iSupport. So I previously mentioned adaptations for Spain, Brazil, Portugal, and Indonesia. So I've just left them here because I did mention them previously, just in case anyone was interested in sort of reading further. But yeah, I think that's it from me. But and I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Oh, that's super, Suman. Thank you so much. It was so interesting.
Thank you.
I've got some questions, but
Yeah.
before we get on to me, does anybody in our audience have anything that they would like to ask? You can pop it in the chat if you'd like to, or you can come off mute and have a chat with us. While everyone's having a little think about that, Suman, I wanted to comment first of all, it's very comprehensive. In all those sections, you've kind of, I didn't spot anything you'd missed. It's obviously a really, really comprehensive research. How much is this being accessed? Do you have figures on how much people are actually looking at this, downloading this, engaging with this?
Yeah, so we've actually just I think last week was the email that I got in terms of it being officially published. So I'm not entirely sure how many people have accessed it so far, but I will say that I've had emails from individuals that were taking part in the focus groups, whether that was caregivers or professionals, that have sort of repeatedly emailed us between, during that entire time where we were getting everything ready, where people have mentioned that they would love to share it across to other people that might need support, to other organizations. So I think there is a large group of people that might potentially access this, and in terms of our own efforts in terms of dissemination, we've had a huge list of sort of community organizations that we can share with, and then also in terms of like our own networks as well as researchers, we've been able to share it with them. And also I work as an assistant psychologist elsewhere, which is also actually in a older adults community mental health service. So I actually specifically support people with dementia living in care homes with challenging behaviors. So it's, I've tried to sort of share it through that avenue as well. We don't have exact numbers of the usage, but that's definitely like a really sort of helpful figure to sort of have a look at, just to actually see our impact. But I will say we've just sort of published very recently, so I'm hoping that it starts to reach more and more people.
Yeah, I was going to say it needs publicity. People need
Yes.
to know about this, and I think that sometimes people do amazing work and then people don't find out about it. And obviously,
Yeah.
today is great in terms of talking about what you're doing. And I know that you've been involved in writing for our Journal of Dementia Care as well. But yeah, this needs to be known about, and the whole suite actually of iSupport.
Yeah.
I think that memory clinics etc. need to be aware of that. I've got some contacts there, so I'm going to do a bit of promo for you.
Oh,
Right,
thank you so much.
enough from me. So, Jadea wants to ask a question. Do you want to ask it, Jadea?
Yep. Yeah. As you can hopefully see from my background, I did the Asian colouring book. Basically, I've
Sorry, I
been
don't
to
think I can hear you too well. I'm so sorry,
I'm sorry.
Jitendra.
Hold on, I'll try
Suman,
and
do you
move
want to
this down
stop
a little
sharing
bit
your
closer.
slides as well? And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
we might be able to see Jadea. We might make it a little bit easier.
Yeah. Basically, I did the Asian colouring book, primarily based on my own experiences, and I try and publicise it as much as I can. I've been going to the Sandwell Network Symposium and been to um, uh, a symposium that was run in Sheffield University. And one of the questions that keeps recurring is that there is no or very little ethnic support. Now, I probably sound too English and look too English, but I'm offering to do workshops and nobody takes me up on it. And I mean, is it that I look too frightening or something? Is
Oh
it me or is it?
no.
I mean, I'm offering this sport, but people don't want to take it. So I find it frustrating.
No, I am really sorry that you're sort of experiencing that. But I think, like Beth previously mentioned, I think a lot of the times with work like this, it requires a lot of sort of publicity, in
Yeah,
terms of people actually knowing about it. And even the same with our research, we've done so much work, and even in terms of like the recruitment of the Bengali caregivers, we actually only were able to sort of recruit 5 individuals, and it was really sort of difficult to actually reach the right group in the right way. So it might be sort of something to do with actually people knowing more about your work,
yeah. Like I
and
said, I do
nothing
try.
related to yourself, of course.
Oh, you can see why I'm getting paranoid, but
Oh no, but it's
it's
brilliant.
it's getting to the point where basically I'm seeking work elsewhere. There is going to be a second colouring book, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everybody's going to make a living on things. So, um, but
No,
you
but
know,
that's brilliant. And I think it's really nice to actually um, have something like that, which is, I think it links back to, in terms of even coloring books. I think it's so nice to see how creative you've been, sort of not just assuming that people want to color in anything, but people want to sort of color in things that are relevant to them. And that's such a huge effort. And I'm sure it is reaching the right people. Even if it might be like a small number at this stage, I think, you're doing such an amazing job.
yeah. I mean, everybody says that, but um, nobody ever emails me back and says, "Oh, could we access this?" Or I never get an email back.
Yeah.
Um, but it,
It's very difficult. I recall in the days of the National Dementia Action Alliance, they had the Seldom Heard and Seen campaign. And
Yeah.
with that, it was very much talking about how actually it's really hard to reach some groups of people, and we know that they're there and they need support, and there are great resources we'd like to signpost to them. But it is about having that dedicated kind of communications, publicity input. I think
Yeah.
Suman would benefit from that, and she's got a big team around her. So yeah.
I was just about to mention, if you're comfortable with it, you feel free to sort of share the link with myself, and I'm more than happy to sort of share it within our researcher community, and ask them to share on as well, because I think it's such a lovely project, and it is a really meaningful project as well. So thank you so much for your work as well.
And finally, along with the colouring book, there is a companion book that's written in English, Hindi, Punjabi and Urdu. Maybe I should investigate writing it in Bengali as well. But it's, like I said, I've tried to be all inclusive, including a video which is in English and Hindi. But if I'm not getting any feedback, there's no interest in it. It's pointless me converting it to different languages. But like I said, the resource is there, but for whatever reason people don't want to access it, then they'll lose it basically. Anyway, that's enough about me. Sorry if I'm promoting myself too much.
No, it's fine, don't worry. And this is it's all about sort of inclusivity and making sure that people access support in different ways. And also, in our iSupport intervention, we mention sort of colouring as an enjoyable activity for the person living with dementia or caregivers. And something like this would be so beneficial because it's relevant to them, it's culturally relevant, and this is really important. But as I said, please feel free to share it with myself, and perhaps you could send it to Beth, and Beth can share it with me, and I'm more than happy to share it within my research group as well.
I'll send you the link to the Dementia Pathfinders, which has got details of the book. You can see it. Thank you for the time, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, because my mother-in-law lives with dementia, so there is a personal connection for me to actually do the work besides just doing it for Dementia Pathfinders.
Oh, that's
thank you.
Yeah, no worries, and thank you so much for your question.
We have some other questions, Suman. Hopefully we've got enough time to get through them. So Mary's saying, are there any differences in digital accessibility across 3 diverse South Asian groups? And she follows that up with, this is particularly relevant for carers who are of mixed heritage or second generation who may not understand parents' culture, language.
Yeah, sorry, just going to read the question again, just to make sure I answer it.
Differences in digital accessibility across 3 diverse South Asian groups.
There could be. There is actually a lot of research out there to suggest that generally there might be sort of that digital exclusion, for individuals from South Asian backgrounds. And it might, there is research to suggest that there might, older individuals, so for example, elderly caregivers who might not know how to sort of access the internet, they might sort of not be able to access something like this. And I think that's where things like, this might not be entirely, it might not entirely support someone from that particular background. And that's where, other avenues, so for example, I've come across sort of like tech support groups, so groups that basically show individuals how to access technology, how to navigate technology. And I think that's where something like that is really important, because I do think there are people from South Asian communities that might not be able to sort of access this, but I think there are also ways that we can actually promote this in a way that we can make it easier to be accessed, but through sort of programs like that. But I do appreciate that there might be occasions where someone might not be able to access this.
I think, for anything that's digital, that's across the board, isn't it? We'll never reach everyone. There are reasons why it is digital and why it's not printed and distributed in that way. There's huge costs attached to that, isn't there? So
yeah, huge costs attached to it. But we do hope that, so a lot of the times, someone might have support from someone else, like another family member, a younger family member who might be able to help, which we've heard about as well, which might help someone to access the intervention, or might be able to sort of download the summary posters, which is why we've got the summary posters, because I appreciate that the actual interventions, it's like 250 pages or so, which is quite difficult to print. So having those summary posters printed, it sort of helps us address digital exclusion a little bit in one possibly helpful way, where we might be able to print and help people access that form of information.
Super, thank you. So NJ says, is there a plan of monitoring learning and impact on professional carers working with South Asian dementia patients? And they follow that up with, I'm looking for quality indicators, hospitals, domiciliary care, etc. And the final question of how do we continue to be connected with this network? I work as dementia advice, work in a dementia carer too. So it's how you're monitoring learning and impact and how to stay connected.
Yeah. So in terms of sort of monitoring learning and impact, I'm part of the sort of cultural adaptation adaptation process, but I'm not entirely sure how, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure how we will be monitoring the learning and impact, but I do anticipate that we would probably be sort of requesting feedback from individuals that we might have sort of shared in terms of like if we've connected with community organizations or the professionals or the caregivers that were involved in the adaptation process. I'm pretty sure we would want to sort of interact with those individuals, because I think they are our sort of first point of access as well, because these are the individuals that were very involved in supporting the development of this intervention in terms of getting their feedback. And from the community organizations that we were involved with as well, that I've mentioned in the presentation, actually speaking with them to see how it's been used. I know that throughout this entire project, when we did the focus group for the Bengali intervention, as a result of our involvement, I know that they were able to sort of create their own carers group as well for Bengali dementia caregivers. So I think that is a really, you know, although we didn't expect that, but it was actually a really good sort of learning point, and to see the impact of our research, how actually involving people within the community in meaningful ways can create impact. But I think our first sort of avenue would be to actually explore with the people that were involved and see how they've been able to use the intervention, what's been helpful, what hasn't been helpful.
Super, thank you. And how to stay connected with your network? I guess follow your work, follow the website.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of the website, if we were to have any sort of future adaptations, that's where we would sort of post. We had a different study website as well, but I don't, yeah, that was basically just to keep people updated on the progress. However, we have the new website, which basically has everything completed, all the different adaptations for cultural adaptations, rare dementias for young carers. So everything is on there. But if we were to do anything new, I think it would be sort of communicated on that website first. And yeah, that's literally the perfect way to stay connected with our research.
Super, and I've just popped that web address in the chat for anyone who wants to go and open it up now. Now, Dave has come up with a really important point. I've had a look at the iSupport manual, and it's 250 pages, which you've just said. A lot of really good stuff, but possibly unrealistic to expect carers to go through this. Could you share a link to the abridged version? So these are obviously the posters, the short documents that you were talking about, weren't they?
Yes. Do you want me to actually just share the link in the chat right now? I've put it in the presentation, but I appreciate it. It might take some time just to get those.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really helpful. So it's the printable support resources, isn't it, off your UCL website?
Yeah, I will share all the links right now. And then, but just to say, I completely understand that this is a very hefty intervention, and it's very hefty to look at. I do completely appreciate that. 250 or so pages is quite a bit, and I completely understand that not everyone might have the time to sort of have a look at something like this, but that's where I think the summary posters do come in. And it was something that was mentioned in the focus groups that some people might prefer much shorter information, whereas someone might prefer a lot of information. And I think it just comes down to sort of what each person prefers, I guess. But there's a bit of both, I guess, which can help to sort of cater to different people's preferences. So yeah.
Super, thank you. People were asking also for Jahinder's book list, a book link, which thank you, Jahinder, you've put that in the chat for everybody as well. Is anyone else got any other questions to ask? I quickly wanted to ask you, Suman, how did you get around language? We know that there is a lot of stigma around dementia language. Obviously, dementia language guidelines have been created. How
Yeah.
did you approach the subject of using language which is understood by
Yeah.
those who are reading the materials, but is also not stigmatizing or taking us back to sort of a time before we really understood about dementia language?
Yeah, of course. And you're so right. I think even in terms of how we sort of speak about dementia in the English language, that's sort of recently changed in terms of the terms that we use, or person living with dementia. I think that's sort of like a fairly newer term that we're all learning about. But in terms of the translations, I will say that it took like a lot of revisions. It took a lot of sort of simplifying the language, and a lot of people within the research team sort of reading it in the other language as well, just to make sure that it doesn't sort of translate into something inappropriate or offensive. So I'll give you an example. I think for one of the languages, the word preface, it translated into something that was completely not appropriate. It mentioned, it basically translated something into something like stop talking, shut up. Like that was what it translated into. But I think that's where having those revisions and having that bilingual research staff is really, really important, because we were able to identify language that might be offensive, language that's generally offensive, but then language that's also, just because we're translating it into another language, it doesn't mean that we forget how to sort of actually talk about dementia in a really respectful way, and about the people that are experiencing it as well. So yeah, there was a lot of revisions, and I think initially it was very much about simplifying the base language, so the English language, as much as possible, and then also translating and then back translating, just to make sure that it's all sort of dementia friendly.
Super, thank you, Suman. Right, this is a great pleasure for me because I get to bring in Masood. So I work with Mac. So welcome, Mac. You've got your hand up, so you obviously want to say something, and you've grown a beard.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I actually my net is unstable, and I missed majority of the discussion here and all the slides. So first of all, can I have the slides, please?
Yes,
And
you will.
secondly,
My colleague Beth Lang will send them to you.
and secondly, this course that we were talking about, is it online or is it face to face? And the observation or the point that I wanted to make was that traditionally with South Asian community, they tend to look after elders anyway, but the majority of them, or in fact all of them, are not trained to look after them. And I think this is a positive sort of approach to this, and I hope that it takes off nationally.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, so just to sort of respond to everything that you said, I think the first one, it's not actually it wasn't built into something that would be sort of used in like community settings. It's an online intervention, but just as a way of accessing it, some of the things that came up in our focus groups is that people would really benefit from looking at this resource with other caregivers, just because it's a more inclusive environment. You learn from each other, and in community settings it might be a less sort of stigmatized setting as well. You're able to learn from others, you're able to share advice, you're able to see that other people might be going through the same thing, and it's just probably like they haven't actually been able to talk about it. So it isn't specifically something that was initially designed to be used in community settings, but we think that it would be a really good way to sort of educate caregivers in community settings. So, community organizations can actually organize to sort of go through it in like carers groups. So yeah, that's one way that it could be used. And in terms of the role of caregivers, I noticed that you mentioned that people just care anyways. And that's something that came up quite a bit in our focus groups as well, that people often don't realize that they are a carer. So people are caring for someone living with dementia, and they just think that it's their duty, it's their, you know, they need to give back. They've been supported their entire life and they must give back, which is, you know, of course, you know, that's their values. But I think something that we wanted to do within the intervention is actually help people recognize that although they do that, they're still a carer, and, you know, there is support available for them, and there is external support that they could access, and there is information that they could sort of access in order to sort of improve their own knowledge about dementia, which not only sort of helps their own well-being, but it also helps the person with dementia as well, because when you improve your own knowledge about a certain condition, it might help someone else as well.
I think that I am living with dementia, okay, and I think the word carer puts some people off.
Yeah.
Because I believe that it should be changed to helper. Because the minute you say carer, the person living with dementia automatically assume that he is incapable of doing things. That independence that he has is lost, or she is lost. So I think to cushion the blow, I think that carer should be the helper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or like, yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because sometimes, and I've heard this from other individuals as well, that sometimes it takes away from the relationship you might you have with another person, and it can be quite sort of formal to sort of be referred as like the carer, care recipient, and ultimately, you know, like you said, words like helper or companion can be much more sort of friendly. And, you know, and it's not just about, and it's about how both individuals feel. So, you know, the person living with dementia also not feeling like they might not be able to do certain things on their own, and rather having the person that's sort of supporting them labeled as sort of like a helper or companion. And I totally appreciate that there is certain language that we need to sort of understand more about in terms of what's sort of respectful.
There's
And
some
I
good
think
language out
also,
there.
I don't want to take too much of your time, but I found this opportunity to talk to yourselves. And I think some of the things that, because I belong to a South Asian community, and I am in there, I'm trying to penetrate and trying to get some more people recruited, but I'm struggling. But, you know, there's another thing that we actually are proud of, because we are so protective of the family that there are times when, if you've got a family carer or helper or companion or whatever, even your partner, there might be times when you are actually suffering with the condition, but you're hiding it from them because you don't want them to suffer, if that makes sense. You know, you don't want to be a burden on your helper or your carer. And therefore, sometimes you hide that. And I think it's important to talk to the person living with the condition more so than the helper or the carer, to get the full insight and get the full story as to how a person is living.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's so many different sort of ways to understand this. So I think I mentioned earlier that some people might not go to some people that might sort of be experiencing memory difficulties might not go to the GP, because they might just see it as sort of like a normal sign of aging. But equally, the point that you mentioned, Masood, is so relevant. You might not want to sort of let people know, or let your family members know, because you don't know what that will turn into. And I completely appreciate that you might, you know, some people might not want to put that sort of burden on other people. And I guess it's, you know, for some people it might be sort of a way to sort of protect their family. But I think, like you said, it's really important to actually speak with the people that are experiencing the condition, to actually understand their lived experience, to, you know, inform our research, to inform our clinical practice in terms of how to best support people that are helping people with dementia and people living with dementia themselves.
That's amazing, Suman. Thank you, Mac. I'd love to hear from you more, but we're over time. I wanted to interject and say I've heard the phrase backup brain for a family member, carer, supporter, helper as well, which I quite liked. But it's super to see you, Mac. Mac and I work together. Mac's one of my experts by experience on some training, so it's super to see you. I'm going to have to wrap this up and bring it to a close because we're over time. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much, Suman, for joining us. Thank you for everything you've shared. And thank you to all of our audience as well. Just as well to let everyone know, our next webinar is on the 25th of June, same time, 2 till 3 p.m, and it's on digital life stories. My colleague Beth Lang has popped a link in the chat. Do go and sign up to hear from our speakers on the 25th of June on digital life stories. And just to say thank you very much again, Suman.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone and for everyone's questions. I really, really enjoyed this, and I do hope this is helpful for you all. But please feel free to share this with as many people as you like, and hopefully it's really helpful for everyone out there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining today, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.